Hi, this is part 3 of the bone rigging lesson. Up to this point, you should have the head rigged and both of the arms. And anytime you're testing, remember that you can get the character bones to snap back into place by either just clicking over here on Select Bone, or you can even click over here in the timeline ruler. Just make sure if you click in the timeline that you still end up back on frame 0. So now let's rig the main part of the body, the torso. We should hide the arms and the hands and the legs so that we can see the points really well in the torso. So go ahead and do that. Now I've zoomed in, and also go over to your layers palette and be sure to activate your torso layer, or whatever you may have named that. And then in the tools, click on the Select Bone tool. Click on this upper bone here in the torso. Click on the Bind Points icon. Be sure that your lasso mode is checked. And we're going to draw around the upper half, okay, and collect all of the points there in that range. Don't forget you need to grab the neck points that were not part of the head. So I'll start, I almost missed one there, and just draw around and then end up on the bottom end of this upper bone. And then I'll click on the Bind Points button. Next, we'll do the lower. Click on the Select Bone tool. Click on that bone. Click on the Bind Points icon. And unfortunately, this area here is one of the trickiest, okay, and everyone's is going to be different. But I only have a couple of points here in this mid-range. I'm not going to grab any of the points down here at the bottom of the shirt or in the hip. So I'm just going to draw around and grab, let's see, what do I have here? 2 points, and then I'll click on my Bind Points button. And let me move up. All the rest of them I will attach to the little hip bone here. So if you end up having trouble with this part, you can always send the file to me. You can always upload the file to me in the cloud storage and we'll get it straightened out. But anyway, clicking here on the select bone, and now I'll select the hip bone here and click on Bind Points, and I'll grab the rest of this body, the points in the body, and then click on the Bind Points button. So I'll test, and I know this won't end up ideal with the, it's not too bad. With the version of Moho that we're using, the debut version, we don't have as many of the bone options as in the Pro version. In the Pro version, for example, I'd be able to fix that, but I'll just have to leave it be. And at least he can bend backwards and forwards a bit and not look too awkward in there. So now we'll move on to rigging the legs. I've already moved mine into position and I've turned those layers back on. And this is pretty simple. It's very similar to rigging the arms and the hands. So if you need to pause the video for a moment to get everything set up, go ahead. And I'm just going to move forward here. I'm starting with the back leg. So obviously in the layers palette, I need to click on the back leg layer. In Tools, I'll click on the Select Bone, and I'll click on the top, the upper leg bone there. And I want to select that whole piece, okay, the upper leg part there. So I'll click on Transform Points and click there in the object so that all of the points in it are selected. And then click the Bind Points icon and the Bind Points button. And then I'll just move on to the lower bone here, selecting it, and then going to the Transform Points tool there and selecting that part of the leg. And then to the Bind Points icon and clicking the Bind Points button. Now I'll need to zoom in for my shoe here, and my shoes are actually very complex. And I'm sure you don't have anything down here as complex as mine, and they're pretty tough to pick the correct points, but for the purpose of this lesson, I may not get mine too great while I'm selecting. So when we made our characters, we overlapped part of the foot behind the leg here. And that means that we need to attach some of those points to this lower leg bone. So I'm going to go over here and click on my back foot layer. I do still have this leg bone highlighted, okay? So I'll go to bind points and I'll draw around some parts of this right here and then click on the bind points button. And now everything that's left will get attached to the foot bone. So I can move over here now to select bone, click on that foot bone, and I need to push this up so I can see all the points. And then click on the bind points button, and now I need to grab everything else, and I'm not going to bother to zoom in, I'm just going to go ahead and wing it, and then click the bind points button. And we'll see if I missed anything. Can test. No, looks like I didn't miss anything. So, you know, that's not great. I would have to spend a little more time working on that to get that sneaker to look a little bit better. Now I've zoomed out so that I could test the whole leg. Okay, so that looks pretty passable. Remember that if you need to fix the joint in the knee, that you need to go up to the top level folder of your character, and then you can click over here on the Transform Bone tool, and let me zoom in. And the bones, if you pass the mouse over top of them, they get a dot at the top, the wide point and the narrow point of the bone. So if you click on the wide point, the dot at the wide point, it ends up moving the bone. And if you click at the narrow point, and you'll see you get that different cursor, the diagonal line or the curved line, and then you end up being able to change the length of the bone. And so up here in the knee joint, if you needed to make any change in the length of that upper bone, you can do it that way. And sometimes you have to make very small adjustments to the points, around this area on your layer. So follow that process now and do the other leg. I'm going to pause and have that all ready before you start the next video.